Let's talk about the BBC. I'm sure you're ready to discuss that in more detail. The Director General told us, the internal investigation has been paused. Is the government content with that?
Well, we're very conscious that the police have asked the BBC to pause their investigations, and it's quite proper that the BBC do so under those circumstances. And so we're now just going to have to see what happens with the police investigation and the outcomes of that.
The police have already said, the Met have already said they're not investigating a criminal offence at this time. They're now scoping after new allegations. The police have said they're not investigating.
Well, as we know, there have been two more sets of allegations that have come to light. As I say, if the police have asked the BBC to pause their investigation, then the BBC must do that. As a government minister, I must not speculate as to what the police may or may not be doing on this.
OK, well, let me put it this way then. What's the government going to do to make sure that this is not kicked into the long grass?
It's for the BBC to investigate their own matters, but of course, if the police are involved, if they're scoping, then it will be for the police to apply the law as it stands and to see whether there is a case or not. But the government must not interfere in any police investigation. That is very,
I've
very
just told you the police have said they're not investigating.
Well, no, they have said that they are scoping, and we have to respect that.
They specifically said they're not investigating.
Yeah, but as I say, there are two more allegations. This is a very fast-moving situation, and it would not be right for a government minister to comment on police operational activity. You know, I'm a former Home Office Minister, Kate. You know I cannot comment on such things.
I'm not asking you to comment. I'm asking you how you're going to make sure that it's not kicked into the long grass.
Well, as I say, it's for the BBC to conduct its investigations.
The police... I mean, we know that it took 7 weeks.
The police is scoping this, and it is a fast-moving situation. As I say, two more people have apparently made sets, or there are sets of allegations.
4, actually, altogether.
Well, then it shows again how fast-moving it is, doesn't it?
It certainly does, but it also shows that the BBC have not learned their lessons from Jimmy Savile, Rolf Harris, and the like. This male presenter was accused of engaging in soliciting sexually explicit images, whether they were illegal or not. The police, as you said, are looking into that. Surely they have completely failed to learn the lessons of the past.
Well, there will come a point for post-mortems on this, and the Director General of the BBC obviously gave an interview yesterday. There will come a point for a post-mortem.
He won't stand scrutiny from others.
I mean, that again is a matter for him. But we have to let these processes go through.
You don't think it's appalling that they haven't learned the lessons of the past?
Because the allegations are so serious, and we have always acknowledged this. We have to let these processes now go through. I mean, there will certainly be lessons to be learned for the BBC, and I can understand why people may be asking questions at this point, and I'm sure those questions will continue to be asked.
So what would you like to say to this this person's parents today? They contacted the BBC. They did nothing about it for 7 weeks. They sent an email and the call didn't go through. And then it was only when a national newspaper held their feet to the fire did they start to scuttle around.
Again, that is for the BBC to justify their...
What are you going to say, Minister, to the parents this morning? Are you just going to stonewall it?
I'm a government minister. I cannot give personal views on this, but what I can say is that my history as a Home Office minister has been about helping victims of sexual and domestic abuse. It's one of the reasons I'm on today to talk about some of the work we're trying to do.
Don't try and swerve I'm doing the interview, Minister, if you don't mind. Do you agree with Jeremy Vine that the BBC presenter should be named?
Well, what is important is that, as I've said all along in this, I was out on the media round on Sunday, we have to remember that there is a young person. It seems now there are more young people at the heart of this. And in all of our conversations, we have to bear that in mind, because whatever comes out of these investigations, this will be a very, very difficult time for the people at the heart of this.
Yeah, and I'm asking you to give a word to the parents, but you've chosen not to do that this morning.
That's not fair.
It's very fair, Minister.
What I've said is that it is incredibly difficult. It will be incredibly difficult for the people at the centre of this, and we have to be mindful of that in all of our conversations. And And the reason I cannot talk about the processes, but of course any parent looking at reading the newspapers will feel enormous sympathy for parents who are facing the sorts of issues that have been raised in the papers.
OK, you can comment on whether or not this presenter should name himself. His colleague, Jeremy Vine, says he should.
Well, again, the issue that has come to light with this, and indeed as we see more the power of social media in nowadays, there is this real problem that I think we as a society have to face as to the impact on innocent people when allegations of this sort are made and people try to work out who is at the centre of the allegations. So we can fix that
by him naming himself?
Well, again, it will be... I'm not going to comment on an individual and the duties or responsibilities of them to name themselves. What we do have to do is just try and give these processes a bit of space to be able to come to an end. Nothing to do with the process, Minister. You well know that. His colleagues are finding themselves in the spotlight because he won't name himself. And one of his colleagues has said, come on now, now's the time. Yeah, and so I think there's a real, as I say, an issue here as to what happens with these sorts of cases when they rightly attract so much media and public attention, the impact that has on people who are nothing to do with the allegations. And I do think there's a role here for social media companies to see what they are doing and checking on their platforms. And of course, we're trying through the Online Safety Bill to bring some of those standards into law to ensure that, not just in this respect, but across the board, that social media companies are held to account. Your boss says he's shocked by what's going on. You're tiptoeing through the raindrops this morning over it. Should MPs use parliamentary privilege to name the presenter? Again, every single parliamentarian will be very careful about using that privilege, and it will be for the Speaker to decide whether, if such a name is provided, that as to whether or not that is in order. I mean, it is for individual parliamentarians to decide that. One of your colleagues sat there yesterday and said that he would urge his colleagues not to. I'm asking you whether you think they should or not. I think we all have a responsibility, actually, with parliamentary privileges. And of course, again, I'm afraid I do take a longer view. And the reason I'm being so careful, Kay, is because when I used to prosecute trials, I had abuse of process applications put in certain cases where media attention was such that the defendant claimed that he could not receive a fair trial. So this is why I'm being extremely careful in my answers to you today. OK, I think with parliamentary privilege, it is very, very difficult, and parliamentarians really do have to remember it's a huge responsibility they face. Talk to me about economic abuse and what you want to say about that this morning. So we think around 1 in 6 women suffer from economic abuse, and that can be anything from a perpetrator taking away your wages or your benefits, to taking a loan out in your name without your knowledge, or locking food cupboards at home in the kitchen. And so what we're trying to do is to help improve understanding of economic abuse, following our Domestic Abuse Act a couple of years ago, and the practical ways that we can all help people who are facing that sort of abuse. I am the minister responsible for the UK's tax system, and we have an agency called HMRC who collects the taxes. And so today, I don't. We have so many acronyms in the Treasury. I never like to assume, but we're rolling out guidance to 30,000 HMRC staff today on economic abuse and what they can do to help when members of the public ring our helplines and ask for help or are in distress. But what we're trying to do as well over the summer, with the help of domestic abuse charities, is to create a digital programme that we will be able to publish freely for every single business around the country to use if they have customer service helplines and they think people might be contacting them in distress, and how they can best help people who are suffering from economic abuse. So it's a really, I hope, really good story of ambition on this. OK, sadly,